Hello. Hey, I'm here from COVID uh, quarantine. I'm sick, but I am going to give you guys your reading for this week. Chapter 1 in Stamped, the story of the world's first racist. So, here we go. Before we begin, let's get something straight. This is not a history book. I repeat, it is not a history book. At least not one like the ones you're used to reading in school. This one will this one the ones that feel like more like a list of dates. There are some dates, and there will be some, with an occasional war here and there, a declaration definitely going to get to the mention of that, a constitution that too, a court case or two, of course, and of course a paragraph that's read during Black History Month. Harriet Rosa Martin. That isn't that. This isn't that. This isn't a history book, or at least it's not a history, the kind of history book that you're used to. Instead, what it is a book that contains history. History directly connected to our lives as we live them right in the minute. This is a present book, a book about the here and now, a book that hopefully will help us better understand why we are where we are as Americans, specifically as our identity pertains to race. The R word, which for many of us still feels rated R, or can be matched only with the other R word, run. But don't. Let's all just take a deep breath, inhale, hold it, exhale, breathe out, race. See, not so bad, except for the fact that race has been a strange and persistent poison in American history, which I'm sure you already know. I'm sure of that. Depending on where you are or where you've grown up, your experience with it, or at least the moment in which you recognize it, may vary. Some may believe race isn't an issue anymore, that it's a thing of the past, old tales of bad times. Others may be certain that race is like an alligator, a dinosaur that never went extinct, but instead evolved. And though hiding in a murky swamp waters, the leftover monster is still deadly. And then there are those of you who know that race and, more critically, racism are everywhere. Those of you who see racism regularly robbing people of liberty, whether as a violent stick up or a sly pickpocket, the thief known as racism is still around. This book, this is not a history book. This is a present book. Is meant to take you on a race journey from then to now to show how we feel, why we live how we live, and why this poison, whether recognizable or unrecognizable, whether it's a scream or a whisper, just won't go away. This isn't the be all end all. This isn't the whole meal. It's more of an appetizer, something in preparation for the feast to come, something to get you excited about choosing a seat, the right seat at the table. Oh, and there are three words I want you to keep in mind. Three words to describe the people we are exploring: segregationist, assimilationist, and anarchist. There are serious definitions to these things, but I'm going to give you mine. Segregationists are haters, like real haters, people who hate you for not being like them. Assimilationalists are people who like you, but only with quotation marks, like you, meaning they like you because you're like them. And then there are anti racist. They love you because you are like you. But it's important to note life can rarely be wrapped up into single word descriptions. It isn't neatly, perfectly shaped, sometimes over the course of a lifetime, and even over the course of a day. People can take on and act out ideas represented by more than one of these three identities. Can be both, and just keep that in mind as we explore these folks. And actually, these aren't just words we'll be using to describe you and me and all of us. So, where do we start? We might just well jump in beginning of the first racist. You're thinking, how could anyone know who the world's first racist was? Or thinking, yeah, tell us so we can find him and find out where he lives. Well, he's dead. He's been dead for 600 years. Thankfully, and before I tell you about him, I have to give you some little context about it. Thankfully, and before I tell you about him, I'll give you a little context. Europe, that's where we are. That's where he was, as I'm sure you learned somehow in history class. Europeans, Italians, Portuguese, Spanish, Dutch, French, and British were conquering everyone because if there's one thing in history books do say is that Europeans conquered the majority of the world. The year is 1415. Prince Henry, there's always a Prince Henry, convinced his father, King John of Portugal, to basically pull a caper and put the main Muslim trading depot on the northeastern tip of Morocco. So, why? Simple. Prince Henry was jealous. The Muslims had riches, and if Prince Henry the Muslims get the Muslims out of the way, those riches and resources could be easily accessed, stolen, a jack move, a robbery, plain and simple. The take and bountiful supply of gold and Africans. That's right, Portuguese captured Moroccan people who were to become prisoners of war. The Moors hadn't planned on fighting, but had to survive. And by prisoners, I mean property, human property. But neither Prince Henry nor King John of Portugal were given the title the world's richest first racist because the truth is capturing people wasn't an unusual thing back then, just a fact of life. The illustrious monarchy would go on a man named neither Henry nor John, but way something way more awesome. Why did something not awesome at all? Gomez Ains de Zorada, which sounds like a cheerleader chant. Did just that. Cheerlead, you say? Whatever. He was a cheerleader, kind of. Not the kind who roots for a team and pumps up a crowd, but he was the man who made sure his team, the team he played for, was represented and heralded as great. He made sure Prince Henry was looked at as a brilliant quarterback making ingenious plays, and that every touchdown was marked of a superior player. How did Zarada do this? Through literature storytelling. He wrote a story, biography of the life of a slave trading of Prince Henry. Zarada was an obedient commander in Prince Henry's militant order of Christ and would eventually complete his book, which would become the first defense of African slave trading. It was called the Chronicle of the Discovery of and Conquest of Guinea. In it, Zarada bragged about the Portuguese being early in bringing enslaved Africans from the Western Sierra Cape, and spoke about owning humans as if they were exclusive pairs of sneakers. Again, this was common, but he upped the brag by explaining how that what made the Portuguese different than other European neighbors in terms of slave trading was the Portuguese now saw enslaving people as missionary work, a mission from God to help civilize and Christianize the African savages. At least that's what Zarara claimed. And the reason this was a one up on his competitors, the Spaniards, the Italians, was because they were still enslaving other Eastern Europeans, as in white people, not called white people back then. Zarara's ace, his trick shot, was that the Portuguese had enslaved Africans, all shades, by the way, supposedly for the purpose of saving their wretched souls. Zarara made Prince Henry out to be some kind of youth minister canvassing the streets, doing community work with what Prince Henry really was more of a gangster, more of a shakedown man, a kidnapper, getting a commission for bringing the king captives. King Henry's cut, like the finder's fee for 150 slaves, equaling money, money, money. Though it was always framed a noble cause, thanks to Zarada, who also paid for his pen. Seems like Zarada was just a liar, right? A fiction writer. So what makes him the world's first racist? Well, Zarada was the first person to write about the defend black human ownership, and a single document began recorded history of anti-black racist ideas. You know how kings are always attached to where they rule, like King John of Portugal. Well, Gomez Inez de Zarara was a king of anything, which he wasn't. He would have been the king Gomez of racism. Zarara book, the Chronicle and the Chronicle of the Discovery and Conquest of Guinea, was a hit. And you know that hits do spread. Like a pop song, everyone claims to hate, but everyone knows the words, and then suddenly no one hates it anymore. And instead, it becomes an anthem. Zarara's book became an anthem, a song sung all across Europe as the primary source of knowledge known as Africa and African peoples for the original slave traders and enslavers in Spain, Holland, France, and England. Zarara depicted Africans as savage animals needing training, needing taming. This depiction over time would begin to convince some African people that they were inferior, like Al Hassan ibn Muhammad al Wazan al Afasi, a well educated Moroccan who was on a diplomatic journey along the Mediterranean Sea when he was captured and enslaved. Eventually freed by Pope Leo X, who converted him to Christianity and renamed him Johannes Leo. He later became known as Leo Africanus, or Leo the African, and possibly commissioned him to write the Survey of Africa. And in the survey, Africanus echoed Zara's sentiments of Africans, his own people. He said they were hypersexual savages, making it the first known African racist. When I was growing up, we called that drinking the Kool-Aid or selling out. Either way, Zara's documentation of racist idea that Africans needed slavery in order to be fed and taught Jesus, and that it was all ordained by God because to in the strict to seep in and stick to the European cultural psyche. And a few hundred years later, this idea would eventually reach America.